I shall unleash my fury upon you like the crashing of 1,000 waves! Begone, vile man, begone from me!
World War I song.
This
Song.
is a
Modern song. It isn't historical at all, yet so many think it is genuine history.
I am untethered and my rage knows no bounds!
Okay, so that was a very silly way for me to start this video, but once the idea struck me, I just couldn't resist it. Wo Alle Straßen Enden, I was first put onto the song by a friend of mine, who's another World War I reenactor, who was telling me about how great it was. And absolutely, it is a brilliant song. Very, very catchy. The words are beautifully written, and I thought to myself that it managed to capture in such a clear and distinctive way the terrible state that Germany was in by the end of the war. It was a decaying, starving empire, a corpse of its former self, being defended by a line of so many hollow shells where once a proud army of men once stood. And perhaps this is no better reflected than in the final stanza of the song I had found, which read as, "I walk the line of corpses, for here so many lie. Just yesterday they guessed not that this would be goodbye. Who knows not us our grand purpose? Who knows how long the sun will shine before I will be free? I'll only know that I'm deceased when mother cries for me." Wow. What a sentiment. Again, it evokes this immensely poignant feeling that the soldier himself is part of that line of corpses, is basically dead, that their existence on the hellscape of the front line is so closely intertwined with death that they will only really know that they are finally truly dead when their mother weeps for them. That last line is what inspired me most to give this song a dedicated video, although all the rest is also wonderfully and rather woefully appropriate for such. Other lines of note include, the field post is lost now, the mud is ankle deep. Some roots that smell like corpses are all we have to eat," which speaks not only to the terrible physical conditions of an ever-decaying front line, but also to the worsening situation in Germany itself regarding its supply lines. By the end of the war, Germany was suffering from severe famines, and large portions of it were starving from the inside. Another line goes, "Where all the roads have ended, the path we walk does not. The land that we defended has all begun to rot." And again, they are fighting a war that is already, by the end, a foregone conclusion. They're defending a dead empire, a fallen regime. Again, how wonderfully it captures the sentiment of late World War I Germany. And what a perfect candidate for a video! The song has become incredibly popular in a very rapid period of time. All of my reenactor friends were talking about it. The memes were beginning to flow. People were humming it and singing it at the events, what few events there have been. And by God, I had the perfect approach to soak in those YouTube views, if you will. They are fatalistic soldiers who consider themselves already dead, fighting for a decaying empire, holding out in a grinding war of attrition in dark and muddied trenches, a people who have become so destitute and ravaged by war that the only thing they have left to give is their lives. Does that sound familiar to anyone at all? Well, if you are a 40K nerd like me, well, that just screams to you Imperial Guard, Astra Militarum, and a certain regiment that I know you all know. The title of my video was going to be Wo Alle Straßen Enden, and the real-life Death Corps of Krieg. And in that video, I was going to talk about how the aesthetic inspiration for the Death Corps goes well beyond the appearance of late war Germany, and how, in a funny kind of way, the Death Corps could actually be considered one of the more realistic factions within the Warhammer 40,000 universe. and it was all of it going to be centered around this one song and what it could tell us about the mentality of German soldiers at the end of the war. A wonderful lens into how they perceived their cause, who they were, what they were fighting for. But of course, as you can see, it didn't end up that way. Now, the first thing that I did in preparing for that video, naturally, was to listen to the song a lot, to get a good feeling for it, take notes on the lyrics and how they're organized, things like that. And in doing so, of course, naturally, I tried to find many different renditions of the song that I could listen to. Particularly, the most valuable thing to find would be a period rendition, something contemporary to the war itself or soon after. However, unfortunately, every rendition I found was modern, and very clearly modern. In fact, while doing a quick search for the song will reveal many results, all of the top ones are pretty much from the same two people, a channel called Dr. Ludwig and Karl Sternau. The songs that they posted, one of which was done by Sternau directly. He's a very talented man, but these are very clearly modern renditions. Very well made. They sound amazing. Again, particularly the Sternau rendition, which is like really, really good. But they're not ultimately what I was looking for. I'm looking for an historical example. All of the other videos, though, from all sorts of different channels, all of varying popularity, all really just seem to be people re-uploading those same renditions and putting different images and video and whatnot to it. I found one initially that got me excited. The video itself was just the title of the song, and it wasn't by a real channel. It was by one of those automatically YouTube automatic upload type things. Die alten Kameraden Topic is what it was called. The artwork was of a post-World War II German soldiers, but hey, all the same, maybe it'll be at least a somewhat older rendition, closer to the time period of the war. But no, it was the same as all of the other renditions. Turns out it was just the original one. I'll get to that later on. This is kind of weird, I'm starting to think. Whenever I do a search for a song like, It's a Long Way to Tipperary, or Roses of Picardy, or Keep the Home Fires Burning, well, yes, you get all manner of modern-day renditions, great modern-day songs, but you also get a lot of period renditions. It's not that difficult to find, World War I recordings and histories and whatnot of those songs. But to be fair, now, to be generous, this isn't Britain we're talking about. This is Germany. Like I said, towards the end, Germany wasn't really in the best state, and this wasn't some triumphalist song, but it's actually pretty solidly defeatist with a lot of those lyrics. So perhaps there just weren't many renditions to start with of the song. Maybe it was just scrawled into journals and the like, and whatever copies there may have been of an actual performance, say, during the Weimar years, well, maybe they were just destroyed during the civic disruptions of the 1930s, and of course, the next war. I mean, it didn't seem terribly likely that there were no renditions of the song made, or that all of those renditions were destroyed over the years. I mean, we actually have a good amount of anti-war material from the 1930s that wasn't, 100% eradicated by the Nazis. We have, interwar films and whatnot during the Weimar period, but it's not, strictly speaking, impossible. There is a vague possibility that that's the case. Maybe, as well, there does exist a copy out there in the world, but because of its rarity, I'm just not able to find it from, YouTube, of all places. So, okay, all the same, in the end, we have a bit of a dead end here, unless I was going to start pouring through, German archives or something. So, before carrying on with, deeper research, I look back to the original videos. First, the one that I liked the most, the one that really got me into the song, by, again, Karl Sternau. The title of that video is Sing with Karl, Wo Alle Straßen Enden, all 5 epic stanzas remastered plus English translation. Now the title there implying that this is not only the original song, but it is the full song, which is more rare to find, I suppose, a more rare thing to find. Kind of like how the song I Vow to Thee My Country, one of my favorites, as a song, actually it has 3 verses, but how really only 2 of them are ever actually sung. I've only ever found one singular rendition after like literally hours of searching, and I came across it by accident, that happens to include the 3rd verse, which is a lot more militant than the rest of the song, being sung by the Royal Marines, and it as well is a modern rendition. So this is the full song, is what I assumed, and it is the one which I fell in love with. And I'm thinking, just as there is only a modern rendition I was able to find of the original I Vow to Thee My Country, maybe it's something similar here. However, the description of the video doesn't really do anything. It does nothing to go against this idea. It just has the usual calls to action, and then there is a list of the lyrics in German and in English. And actually, it was at that point that I realized another weird curiosity of it all, that the English translation worked really well. Now, normally, when translating music from one language to another, you miss out on a lot of the nuance and the poetry behind the songs, because certain words, certain phrases don't necessarily translate very cleanly. So the translators of this kind of material, they usually face an interesting dilemma between just transcribing the writing as it was originally written, or adding their own interpretations into the mixture in an attempt to better capture the overall spirit of the original piece. So at that point, I assumed here that Mr. Sturnau was providing English speakers with the latter. He was giving us a beautiful poem in the spirit of the original, but not necessarily a direct translation, which immediately kind of dampened my spirits a little bit, because all of a sudden that wonderfully woeful turn of phrase, "I'll only know that I'm deceased when mother cries for me," may not have been what the original song actually said, and may not reflect any actual historical soldier's perspective. All the same, it was on to the comments, hoping that perhaps someone there could shed a little further light for me without my having to go really into a big old deep dive. Maybe I can find a hint here or there. Well, we have, of course, the generic comments we've all come to expect from YouTube, alongside a lot of individuals commenting on the historical reality behind the song. And you know exactly what I was going to be making a video about, how sad and tragic the song was, all that sort of thing. One commenter wrote, "This is beautiful, sad, and disturbing. German soldier songs are full of little bees, flowers, and nature. But this one represents in a straightforward, crude way the horrors those poor soldiers went through unnecessarily." Another commenter said, "The fact they even called themselves verloren, lost, manifests the name of their generation." Frowny face. A bit more directly, one comment stated, "Leave it to the soldiers to make the most poignant anti-war songs." Now, all of these comments speak to this song being a very real World War I soldier's song. All of these people think that it is that. And indeed, it has helped to inform these individuals' views of the past. They're thinking, wow, so many soldier songs are about like little bees and women and flowers and whatnot, but this one's different. And maybe that person, as a result, thought to themselves, wow, maybe the philosophy, the mentality, the culture, so to say, of the German military was different than I first thought. It's informing the way that people are viewing the past, as indeed, up to around this point, it had done so quite comfortably, quite confidently in myself as well. Again, I was thinking, wow, what a great lens into late war German ideals and mentality. Eventually, however, I did find a comment that would go on to, that would help me, so to say, to go a little bit deeper into the rabbit hole. The commenter wrote, "This is the perfect Wo alle Straßen enden," it stated. "I'm sorry, but Dr. Ludwig's version is just humming 90% of the way." Rather interesting note, sort of a critique, but there came a reply to it. Quote, "To be fair, his version is the official version, which only contains one verse, whereas the other verses were penned for this. As good as it is, it's not authentic, which is more of what Dr. Ludwig attempts to show." Ah ha ha ha, interesting. So Mr. Sternau is not only very talented, but he is willing to use that talent to write practically a whole song in the theme of the First World War, while conveniently omitting that it is not a World War I song, but his own creation in order to garner wider appeal from historically inclined individuals. This seems to be the case, at least from what we've seen so far. Indeed, through a few different comments and other posts in different corners of the internet, a few translation websites and whatnot, I found a number of individuals echoing the same sentiment. There was an original song which Mr. Sternau added onto after the fact. Well, then, let's go to the source, according to all these people, Dr. Ludwig. A number of people even told me, go to Dr. Ludwig's channel for the original Wo Alle Straßen Enden, German soldier song plus English translation. So again, the title here of this video, much the same, with the claim that it is a real soldier's song. Now, this description, too, features the same call to action and lyrics, though alongside a much clearer insistence on the song's origins. Dear YouTube, it reads, this is World War I and not World War II. As well, he cites the original source from which he found the song, and that explains that. Dr. Ludwig found the song from an earlier CD, which in fact I found the whole CD, which has a whole bunch of different German songs from different time periods and whatnot, but that would explain why the auto-generated one had that picture of post-war German soldiers, because it came from a much wider piece, so to say, featuring songs from, the 18th century all the way up to the Cold War. Although, again, that leaves the actual origin of this song a little in doubt. Who knows if it's from World War I or whatever. But anyways, though, the comments in that video are all much the same. Alongside the memes, a number of them carry the idea that this is an original World War I song, as was written in the description, and as such can tell us something about the German army and population of that time period. But again, while everyone is operating under that same basic assumption that this song is in fact from the First World War, we do not see any original citations to actually indicate this. The closest we have is that CD which Dr. Ludwig linked, which unfortunately gives us no solid information to actually work with. Now, there is one more major video of note here with over 1.5 million views, uploaded by a channel called InGen. It is yet again the Alte Kameraden rendition, which Dr. Ludwig, got it right that time, uploaded. In his description, however, InGen speaks with a much stronger authority on the nature of this song and its history. He writes, quote, "Little is known about this song, but what we do know is that it was a German soldier song during World War I describing the horrors of war." He goes on to confirm the idea which many people have echoed, that there is an official version with one verse. What exactly official actually means in this capacity, no one's actually mentioned as of yet what makes one song official. I guess it means to say there is the original song, the original, World War I song with the one verse, and then there is on top of that the rendition by Karl Sternau, where he wrote all of the additional ones. But again, while this is a very confidently written description, there's no solid information on which to base any of it. There's no citations. So, naturally, I had to expand my search a little bit more in a more formal capacity, and I turned to the wider internet. Doing a search for the song, the first 7 results are just YouTube videos, though one does offer a new detail not yet discovered, that it is a, quote, a song based on a poem by a German soldier in World War I. Ha ha! What have we here, then? Well, the same rendition, as it turns out. The person literally just re-uploaded the exact same song again and made a claim, once again, without a citation. Onwards we go. I found a number of translation and music, lyric websites with all the lyrics posted and whatnot, mostly with different translations of the Karl Sternau version, and one or two of them, again, echoing the same vague and pseudo-historical points that we've seen throughout this video repeatedly. I also found a Reddit post linking the InGen video and providing another layer of information, but again, without any actual basis. That particular user wrote, "Wo alle Straßen enden, a WK1 song, found new late-war popularity among the despairing soldiers of the German army, caught between the socialists to the west and the Woynists to the east, and worst of all, Marshal Ferdinand Schörner behind them." Ooh. So interesting. Now an individual saying that this isn't a song based on a poem, but was originally a song that was presumably written earlier, but then found new popularity towards the waning days of the war. But again, where's the citation? Where is the really any level of context? It's all wholly missing. I found a whole bunch of Reddit posts that were very, very similar. People linking the song to each other, talking about how much they enjoy the song, and how deep and meaningful it is, and of course, all telling stories to each other about what they heard about the song's history. It's a very mysterious past, they say. Not much is known about the song, but what we do know is this, that, and the other. They spin these tales without any actual evidence. The stories are just building up, one on top of the other. But through it all, you see, we never actually find the actual base for it. I searched for the lyrics of the song and found nothing. The name and the lyrics in English, and I found nothing. Google Scholar renders nothing remotely related to the First World War, or even the song, as it were. Literally, I searched for the title and I got 7 results, including a German text about, I think it's a migration history of Canada or something, and another about German translations of English-Canadian children's literature. This is basically what nailed the coffin firmly shut in my mind, because yes, it is entirely possible that a song that has a mysterious background and not much is known about it, it's entirely possible that early renditions are mostly lost to us, and so that the internet has become more saturated with the modern renditions and whatnot. And because of that, yes, individuals can maybe fill in the gaps with their own assumptions, and then they go and make posts in the same spirit, which others then take as fact, which they also sometimes misremember, but talk about anyways, and others then take that as fact, and soon enough we have a spiral of misinformation, stories people tell each other ad infinitum, which is sufficient to drown out an original truth of some kind. But even with all of that being the case, if there was an original truth, if there is actually an historical song, what I find very unlikely is that there does not exist, at least that I could find after hours of searching, a single academic article written about it. At the very least, there should be historical references to be found. That every time I do any kind of search relating to anything about this song, I only ever find these 2 or 3 modern-day versions of the song and the exact same pieces of baseless information all circling around. There's nothing there. There's nothing actually solid to base anything off of. So at last, before entirely scrapping the idea for the video, I turned to the public. I asked on my Facebook page and on my YouTube community tab if anyone had any information that could help me here to lead to anything, to lead to something for some kind of content. I had a number of Germans and German-speaking individuals, including actually a friend of mine who studies explicitly German music history and has a bunch of old German music books. All of them saying that they would look into it as well, and they never found anything. Though, again, thank you very much to everyone who did do a little bit of research for me, but no one was able to turn anything up in any of the, original more German sources and whatnot. And at last, from a number of different sources, both there and through continued searching on my part on obscure German internet forums, which is a very dangerous thing to do, a new piece of information did arise from out of the static. that the song was not in fact from the war, but was a post-war song written explicitly for a film about the war. Now, a few places indicated to me along the way that it came from a film by the same name as the song and from the year 1957. At least the year 1957 was thrown around an awful lot. Wonderful, yes! So I did a search for exactly that. Alle Straßen Enden film. That's not quite what I was looking for. No idea where people got the idea that it came from the same... Yeah, weird. People don't do Google searches, I suppose. Once again, back in the dark, I was lost. But then another light appeared in the form of Master Yoda himself. Another film title that he thinks he remembers hearing the song from. He thinks he does. West Front, 1918. Yes, aha. A 1930, super obscure and entirely depressing film about the terrors of the First World War from Weimar, Germany? What better candidate could there possibly be to finally solve the mystery? So I found the whole film on YouTube, and then for our monthly patron exclusive live streams, we watched it. We watched the whole thing. Didn't really understand a word of it, was all in German, but we did have a fellow there who was able to translate the most important points to us. And actually, to be fair, you don't really have to speak the language to appreciate the film. The ideas are very straightforward, but they're very artfully done. I actually really liked it. It was interesting to see a German-made piece about the war so soon after the fact, and made during the Weimar period, so, you know, it was before the Nazis came along, things like that. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, I can recommend that you go give the film a watch. But there was a lot of music in that film, a lot of beautiful, funny, heroic, and tragic music. But not a one of those songs contained the tune or any of the words, at least that I could hear, of Wo alle Straßen enden. And that was that. End of the line. I might even be able to say, Alle Straßen enden, hört unser Weg nicht auf, und ich bin verloren. So, if anyone out there has any information at all about this song, any solid information, please, please, please do come forward and point it out to me, please. And don't just come with, like, oh, I think I remember hearing about, or, oh, this other person says that they heard from another guy. No. What we need is actual cited information, a soldier's journal, a songbook, anything, even a piece of, secondary scholarly information that can actually lead us to proper understanding instead of anecdotal evidence, as so much of this stuff seems to be at this point. But until that information does come about, literally anything at all, I can only operate on the basic assumption that the song is in no capacity historical, and indeed the burden of proof seems to be on those who are claiming that it is a World War I song, even though there is no information readily apparent to actually suggest that. Now, I want to make it clear, very clear, that I don't mean to make this into some weird attack on Dr. Ludwig or any other YouTube personalities, any of the people who re-uploaded the song and such with false information in their descriptions and whatnot. Even against Karl Sternau, I think that his biggest sin is just that he didn't specify whether the song was historical or not, whereas he ought to make a post specifying that it is indeed his own creation. Maybe as well he did make that post, and I just haven't seen it yet. And that isn't because of any, legal concern. I think he actually ought to put it on the, in the description of the video itself, maybe leave a comment in the video itself, something like that. Again, it's not because of like any legal concern or what have you, but it's because it's pretty evident to me that many of his viewers are convinced, just by looking at the comments, they're convinced that the lyrics to the song are historical, whereas they are not. They are his own creation. I would like to see him take more steps to take credit for his own work in that way. And to all the people, from Dr. Ludwig to InGen, all the smaller YouTube channels and whatnot, all of the random Reddit posters and online forum posters and whatnot, all these people, I don't blame any of them for falling into this trap. I myself, until I thought about making this video and started looking into it all, I also assumed that this song was genuine. Again, it's basically just a cycle of misinformation in which all it takes is one individual to post or publish something online that isn't based off a properly cited primary source, but instead off of an anecdotal story or their flawed memory or even their own flawed interpretation of information that was handed down to them. And then, another person can come along, they see that, they take it as truth because, for whatever reason it seems solid to them. They don't have a reason to question it or something like that. Well, they don't think they have a reason. Obviously they have a reason. They don't think they have a reason to question it. So then they take that and they repeat it as truth, and perhaps along the way they fill in a little bit of their own flawed interpretation or their own memory comes into play. And so it gets repeated that way, slightly off again, and again and again and again. Basically, ad infinitum, the information is repeated until you get a situation like the one that I spelled out for you in this video. A one in which a whole house of cards has been built up groundlessly. A one in which we have a complicated lore all surrounding an untruth, something with no actual basis. It's just very unfortunate how common this kind of misinformation can be. Actually, on a slightly different subject, my friend Chris has run into this exact sort of problem with a video correction he once made about how the song Black Betty is indeed in no capacity whatsoever related to the brown bess musket. There is tons of evidence that shows it's not related and zero actual evidence to say that it is. And yet, there was one popular comment that read under the video of that song that read about how it was with all false, flagrantly false information. And yet because of that one comment and because of the stories that people build up with nothing to support it, still Chris gets bombarded with messages of people insulting him, saying how stupid he is, how he can't do research, and saying how he's wrong and everything, based ultimately off of nothing more than their own conjecture, their own anecdotes, and their own memory, all of which are not a basis from which we may form a proper historical scholarship. And on the whole, a lot of communities, not just like YouTube and whatnot, are plagued by this exact same idea. Particularly, I think of my own communities, historical reenactment. As well, there's wargaming and sea shanty groups. Actually, when I was chatting with different groups of my friends and whatnot about this video idea, two of them, wholly independently of one another, these people have no idea, they've never met each other and whatnot, independently and pretty much at the same time actually, they each referenced to me their frustrations at how so many people think the song Barrett's Privateers was actually like an historical sea shanty, when in fact it was first written in the 1970s. Indeed, a great deal of the sea shanties we have from the Age of Sail actually post-date the Age of Sail pretty significantly. I'm sure, indeed, that there are tons of songs in my own mind that I am convinced are from a historical time period, but ultimately, if I were to put it to the test and really started digging, I would come up entirely flat on actual evidence for those ideas. False and flawed information can spread far too rapidly. So I suppose at the end of it all, if I were to offer a lesson at the end of the day, it would be this. When it comes to history, you need to be a skeptic. You need to be as objective as possible. Just because a piece of information is coming from a source which is otherwise reliable, even, someone like myself, one of my videos and whatnot, doesn't mean that the information itself, the individual piece, is reliable. It doesn't mean that the person giving it to you is nefarious. It doesn't mean that Dr. Ludwig is, cackling evil, being like, haha, yes, I'll make them all think it's from World War I, whereas not at all. That's ridiculous. It just means that the person is not infallible. Nobody is infallible. I make mistakes in my videos, which people point out to me, and I'll try to make corrections where I can and whatnot, but it exists. Academic works, academic books, and articles and whatnot make mistakes, and, shocking, YouTube comments and Reddit posts also make mistakes. Indeed, you can trust and have faith in the intentions, the intellect of an individual while questioning their interpretation or their memory of certain things. So whenever there's a big piece of information, Always ask individuals what their sources were, where and how they came across the information, and how you can find it yourself. Check those sources yourself. Double check those sources with other sources, and compare it against modern scholarship as well. Basically, do your due diligence. Never assume that something is true, even if you really want it to be. Especially when that information is coming to you again from someone online whom you do not know and whom you cannot possibly guess as to their own background, biases, and potential agenda. Something like this isn't all that important. Admittedly, isn't all that important for a World War I song. But if you start bringing it into your reenactments, if you start talking to people in the public about it, and in my case, if you almost make like a video about it, well, then it does start to matter a lot more. And of course, when it comes to things like politics, it matters a lot. Don't just trust things because a commenter referenced it at one point.